guys.
Hello everybody, this is History Shock, and today I have a guest on. This is Mr. Troy Paterno, and today we are going to be discussing the age of the Viking Age, rating the key aspects of the Viking culture, and how interesting it truly was, and the real facts of the matter. So you can get started now, Troy.
Well, the Viking era started around 1800 AD, with Vikings hailing from mainly Scandinavia, and later going on to conquer areas like Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, which were their main three areas of Scandinavia.
Yes.
It promoted a raiding/farming society. So in summer months, you were supposed to go raiding, and that if you were a warrior, you were seen as honored by the gods, such as Odin and Tyr, who was their, I'm pretty sure he's their god of war. In winter months, you would be a farmer. Most Vikings were farmers. They did not have money, really. When you were part of a higher class of Viking, there was a class society in Viking culture. And clan leaders and such, people like that would have more of the loot from the Viking raids. But food tended to be shared evenly. They were farmers, but they couldn't farm as much as a farmer in, say, Britain or France or because it was much colder in those areas. Most of the land was ice covered, kind of. It was not optimal for growing crops or having livestock.
No. And although the Vikings may be seen as strong brutes who, crush their enemies with a strong iron fist, this is actually not the case, because they actually relied on scare tactics. They relied on
speed.
And the
element of surprise.
Yeah, to surprise and scare their enemies until they were able to raid and get all the stuff they needed, like slaves, like supplies.
Well, slaves were minor. They would normally take supplies, any weapons they could find, especially.
Yes.
As in northern areas, they didn't really have any iron to mine, and it was hard to smith a proper weapon. Most Viking weapons were. They're like when you start a game and you get that 2 damage weapon that falls apart in, no time. They were pretty bad due to most Vikings being poor.
Yeah.
You want to say something else?
Well, they tried raiding rich and underprotected villages, around Britain, and they actually controlled the entirety of Britain for short periods of time before, the person who was in control of Britain or in control of England kicked them out. So this is actually a very interesting fact as well. And I'll let Troy cite some more facts about Viking culture. Isn't that right?
Yeah, sure. A Viking culture was their gods were a pantheon. Like the Greek, Roman, those are technically the same, just with some different names and slight differences. The Greek, Roman, and Old Egyptian called, I don't know, there's not really a reason. It's just how they thought. They thought there were multiple gods that would give you a blessing depending on. But
of course, there's not much. There's not many records of their religion, because
there's not.
It was orally spoken. It was orally transmitted. Their religion.
Most of their people weren't. They couldn't write.
They were illiterate.
They weren't illiterate. They just couldn't. Oh, they are. Okay, that is illiterate. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I got them confused. They couldn't write. Most of them didn't know how to.
They spoke Old Norse, which is a North Germanic language. They spoke Old Norse. So, yes, that was their language. Their religion was Norse,
it was
right?
Just Norse.
Yes, Norse.
Just plain Norse.
Yeah.
Some gods you may recognize from that are obviously all of those which show up in the Thor series, the Marvel Thor series. Thor, Loki, Odin, Hela, and Tyr is their god of war, who I mentioned earlier. And there were many more gods. A lot of crazy stuff. There were dwarves. The world snake. He's a giant snake. So they believe that the world was not a globe, and they believed it was more like a flat Earth scenario. They believed it was a large round
disc.
Disc, would be the best way to describe it. And that the world snake wrapped around the entire disc in the underwater areas. And he's a giant fucking snake. I mean, that's how it is.
Yes, Viking religion is very extravagant.
It was fun, but they need stories to tell.
Yeah. And one of the reasons they were able to raid so, efficiently, this is digressing from the topic, but one of the reasons they were able to raid efficiently was because they had a very technological device that they used, the longboat. They were very good seamen. They were very good at sea.
The best of their time.
Without
a compass either. They would use the sun and
other
sky thing. They would use the sun, their stars. They were master seamen. Pretty much.
Yes, they were master seamen. They had the longboats, the wooden longships. They were light, so they were able to.
They were fast.
Yes, and they were fast. And they were able to go through the ocean. They were also able, the big ocean.
It much helped.
They were also yes, and they were also able to go through rivers and stuff like that. That are obviously smaller than the ocean. Rivers are obviously smaller than the ocean. And one of the most interesting things about the Vikings was that they actually were the ones who first discovered North America, the first Europeans, basically, because they came over to North America in as early as
1000 AD.
1000 AD, and they had their first settlement in North America on the eastern eastern shore of Canada, not Canada.
Yeah, I don't know. I said that.
But yeah, the Vikings were a very important part of history, a very significant part of history.
They had an immense influence on language.
Yes.
When they first went to Britain, their words affected how the British spoke. As when they would go in and they would conquer England, when they left, their settlers were still there, and their settlers spoke Norse. But they needed a way to communicate with the English people, and over time that they mended into a new type of language. And this also has to do with the end of the Viking culture. It also had to do a lot to do with language, as there was a duke, or baron, something like that, down in France. I don't remember the exact story, but
yeah.
We didn't do research. We're mainly doing research.
The Norwegian king.
There was one king so at one point, a king of England promised 2 people the throne. 3 people the throne. No, 2. Okay, 2. He promised one man that was a duke down in France, or duke or baron down in France, who was a bastard. Don't remember his name. And he was from France. He came up, tried to conquer England, but he had to wait he had to wait so long that the English ended up going home with their invasion fleet. Or not their anti-invasion fleet. Because the wind would not shift from going southern to northern. But at that same time, the Norwegian king, Harold Hardrada, came down from Norway, right?
Yeah,
Norway.
Norwegian.
Those areas. And he came and he tried to invade. This is where the Viking era ends. He tried to invade England, and it was his last big conquest. He had fought all over the world. He was a mercenary for money. He got rich off the back of it. Just filthy rich. And he wanted to cement his name in history. So he took a ton of Vikings down to England to wage a proper war with them, to take England, to put his name in the history books. He failed. He lost.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's where the Viking era ends. As
it ended in 1066
slaughtered.
AD, 1066 AD.
In September of it.
Yes, because he tried, taking control. It was a major failure.
Another fun fact, Vikings one time tried to go and raid
Paris.
And when they tried to, they didn't get killed. They got pretty much captured by the Parisian government. I guess that's how you say it.
Yes, the government.
And they said, well, we'll pay you if you defend us from other Vikings. And they became Viking down there. But also to do with the end with Hardrada ending there, fun fact, the guy that came up from France, when he he eventually took the throne of England, and that actually had a huge impact on language because they took words from both. Like up in England, they would call a sheep a mutton, and down in France, they would call it a sheep. So they took those and combined them. You get mutton is the meat and sheep is the pig, and it was same with cows, pigs. They were all, the meat was pretty much what they called it up in England, and down in France they call it the actual animal.
Yes, very fun and interesting facts. And that's about all we have for the Viking. You please like, comment, and or share and subscribe. And that's all we have. So goodbye.